All right, I am going to call the Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 regular council meeting to order and begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation of Alberta, District 11, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. Thank you. All right, the first item is we do have a consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes of May 28th, 2024, and rescheduling the regular council meeting for June 25th from 2 p.m. to 10 a.m. These items, if anybody wishes, can be severed and put individually, but if not, I will take a motion. Councillor Batoye.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that council approve the consent agenda as presented and circulated.
Great, thank you very much. Not seeing anybody wishing to sever these items, I will close the motion. Please cast your vote.
In favor.
And that is carried. Thank you very much. Let's see, we do not have any delegations who have registered for today, but on the agenda that was presented or sent out, there were 4 letters attached speaking to the notice of motion that will be provided later in the agenda. And I'm only mentioning that because that's the first time we've kind of done that. So if anybody didn't find them on there, that's where they are. The next one that we have is a presentation from the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board. We have Mayor Jeff Acker from Spruce Grove, who is the Vice Chair, and Karen Woodchuck, who is the CEO, and we have about 15 minutes, and then any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mayor Katcher, for allowing us to present in front of your council. Thank you, Council. On behalf of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, I would like to thank you for hosting us this afternoon. And I'm very pleased to be here as the Vice Chair of the EMRB. Last year marked an important milestone for the EMRB, 15 years as an engine for regional collaboration and transformative change. In that time, we've developed an award-winning growth plan that has supported economic competitiveness and employment in communities and housing, transportation systems, and so much more. We've implemented a regional servicing plan to increase capacity and reduce costly duplication. We've created a transportation master plan that prioritizes critical projects and decreases capital planning costs. And we've completed and are implementing an agricultural master plan, the first of its kind in Western Canada. Through the MRB, we are building a globally competitive region that offers an unparalleled quality of life and a wealth of economic opportunities. With a population of 1.5 million and a GDP of $109 billion, our region is one of Canada's youngest and fastest growing. In the next 20 years, our region is on track to welcome another 1 million people and add 500,000 jobs. The global economy has no time for laggards. Competition is heating up, and business as usual is simply not good enough. To stay competitive, we need the right talent, smart infrastructure, forward-thinking policies, and a collaborative mindset. We want to be the best place in the world to live and raise a family because of our seamless infrastructure and vibrant communities, both rural and urban. It is now my pleasure to introduce our CEO, Karen Woodchuck, to provide a more detailed overview of the MRB and all of our work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and it's great to be here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and provide a little bit more detail on what the EMRB is doing. When the MRB was created in 2008, we were tasked with creating a regional growth plan that would enable growth and foster prosperity, sustainability, and quality of life. The result was Reimagine Plan Build, our 30-year vision for the Edmonton metropolitan region. You can think of this document as a blueprint that guides the EMRB's work. Operationalizing the growth plan is a series of master plans that go into greater detail, laying out objectives and policies. Some examples of these include our regional servicing plan, our regional transportation master plan, and our regional agriculture master plan. Our rolling 3-year business plan is our action plan. It's where we advance our core priorities with concrete actions and measures. The EMRB is focused on 3 core priorities. The first is enabling a prosperous region. The goal is to build a vibrant, inclusive, sustainable, and globally competitive region that empowers residents, businesses, and communities to thrive. More specifically, this involves attracting investment by offering consistent and integrated long-term plans that support the growth of major employment areas, coupled with efficient infrastructure and multimodal forms of transportation. We also ensure that our plans remain relevant and responsive as we grow. We are currently completing the work on a 5-year review of our growth plan. This includes looking at population and employment data, key performance indicators, and targets for selected KPIs. And it also includes undertaking work to better understand the capacity available to accommodate opportunities for economic growth, as well as to identify any gaps in infrastructure that could affect our ability to respond to new economic opportunities for growth in the region. Further, with the province approving our Regional Agriculture Master Plan, or RAMP, in 2022, and now included in the growth plan, we need to better understand how to balance all land uses in the region. Concurrently, we also need to consider where the next 1 million people will live and where the next 500,000 jobs will be accommodated in the region, and what is required to continue to build vibrant communities in both rural and urban settings that provide the highest quality of life. While our current housing landscape remains one of the most competitive in the country, data on current and future trends is alarming. And we know if we don't keep pace with that demand, the impact on the region's economy could be devastating. The EMRB's second core priority is stewarding our natural resources and our assets. Part of this is effectively planning for parks and open spaces for our residents to enjoy cultural and recreational activities where they can connect with nature and one another. This also means wisely managing the region's prime agricultural land base to ensure long-term viability, food security, and new economic opportunities. This includes promoting diversification and value-added agriculture production, as well as identifying areas where we can be more competitive in the agriculture sector. The EMRB also needs to continue to play a leadership role in promoting the health of the region's natural assets, such as our watersheds, airsheds, and other environmentally sensitive areas. That's why the EMRB is also focused on building our climate resiliency and effectively managing stormwater and solid waste. That brings me to the EMRB's third core priority, building enduring partnerships. Collaboration is a powerful force, allowing us to build something together that we couldn't build alone. Fostering collaboration also drives synergies that eliminate costly duplication. Beyond demonstrating vision, leadership, commitment, and open dialogue, we're also building enduring partnerships with the provincial and federal governments, Indigenous communities, and key organizations and institutions in our region, and advancing our vision and strategic priorities. On the following slides, we've highlighted some of your strategic goals and identified EMRB's initiatives that we believe will help support local efforts. When we look at the city's goal to strategically plan, prepare, and manage responsible and sustainable growth for residents and businesses, I know that I automatically think about the EMRB's mandate, which is not just to manage, but also to enable growth. Indeed, the EMRB's focus is on creating the conditions that make people want to live, work, and invest here. This includes advocating for regional transportation priorities to be funded, undertaking an assessment of the regional labor market requirements, and measuring where we stand with economic corridors to ensure we fulfill our vision. These are all strategic initiatives that we know will be valuable not only for member municipalities, but for other regional partners such as the Industrial Heartland. At the EMRB, we also want to ensure that that our integrated long-term land use planning meets the needs of residents, businesses, and industry. Like the city, our approach is about ensuring that we are optimizing public investment and maximizing the use and value of land, infrastructure, and services to the benefit of future citizens at a cost that we can all afford. Whether it is our work on integrated land use and infrastructure or on a regional transportation model and prioritization process, we offer tools that can be used regionally, sub-regionally, and locally. We have also sought to leverage best practices across the region to gain efficiencies and savings through the implementation of our regional servicing plan. We focused on two key areas: stormwater management and solid waste. Building on the success of EPCOR's Stormwater Integrated Resource Plan, the EMRB developed a granular flood risk assessment model for the region. This constitutes an essential first step to help prioritize future capital and operational investments in flood mitigation and can support municipalities in developing targeted flood mitigation strategies to improve flood readiness and resilience. At the same time, EMRB has also set its sights on better managing solid waste. Strategically managed infrastructure can also extend to broadband, which is vital to a competitive and attractive modern economy and ensuring quality of life for all residents in the region. That's why the EMRB undertook a regional assessment on broadband and digital infrastructure. This resulted in the creation of a data bank and a single point of access for investors to identify opportunities available in the region. The EMRB also shares the city's goal to foster vibrant and prosperous communities. Diverse housing options, good paying jobs, and social, cultural, and natural amenities can't be left to happenstance. The EMRB recently commissioned a report to benchmark the region on a wide range of factors to determine where it stands relative to its peers and/or aspirational regions across Canada, throughout North America, and around the world. Insights from this report will be made public next week and will help the EMRB and other regional leaders to improve quality of life and enhance the region's competitiveness. As I mentioned earlier, we're also keen to undertake an integrated regional open spaces master plan that includes natural asset mapping and the identification of recreation corridors and the opportunities to promote tourism. Enabling growth also means being responsible in how we grow. In addition to stormwater and waste management, our recently completed climate risk and vulnerability assessment provides a comprehensive understanding of our most critical climate impacts and how to learn how to avoid and reduce risks, seize opportunities for both action at the local and regional level. As you may know, in the short term, we're facing some budget pressures. Over the last few years, provincial funding to the EMRB has fallen by 50% from $2 million to $1 million since 2019-20. This is a significant barrier to our continued success. Since 2018-19, our member municipalities have made contributions just under $1.9 million on an annual basis. The EMRB board and leadership team have begun a prioritization exercise and will be presenting budget scenarios to the board later this fall. There is still much more work that we need and want to do, but the reality is that we need to take a much more focused approach and extend our anticipated timelines for undertaking key initiatives in our business plan. We are also firmly committed to continuing with our advocacy with the province and efforts to seek out partnerships with other like-minded stakeholders that are committed to further enabling the region's growth. These types of partnerships and collaborations are inherent to our long-term success. There is boundless potential in this region, and my team and I are very proud to be able to work so closely with member municipalities to achieve our shared vision. The Edmonton Metropolitan Region has a long history of intermunicipal collaboration, over 70 years worth. In the 16 years since our creation, the EMRB has made steady progress towards a shared vision for our region. Occasionally, we take a step back to refocus, which is to be expected. No journey to a worthwhile destination is without bumps. Together, we are working to break down traditional barriers and boundaries to build a more prosperous, sustainable, and inclusive future that we all deserve. Thanks very much for your time and happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I will go to questions. Just before I do, everybody says Mayor Acker is the radio station of EMRB for his voice. So I will open it up to any questions of members of council. Councillor Blissard, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. You mentioned about the budget. Is it only municipally supported? Because isn't this government mandated too by the provincial government?
It is supported by both the province and member municipalities. So the province has reduced its provincial contribution by half to $1 million. So through that, we face those budget pressures going forward. The board will continue with its advocacy efforts to have the province come back to the table as equal partners. So we have $1 million a year going forward, which is sustainable funding, as well as the municipal contributions. And we're looking at other ways in which we can access grants through the province to support some of the activities.
Okay, I thought that's what you meant with the reduction and it should be more provincially supported. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. You mentioned watershed, but I think in your interpretation of watershed, that's the North Saskatchewan River Valley within the region. My concern stretches to the Rocky Mountains and our future 50-year supply of drinking water. Has the AMRB looked at, or do we just depend upon EPCOR, for instance, to assure us and our region that 50 years out we will have an adequate source of drinking water flowing down that river course?
I can. So your question is a really interesting one. I think there's two parts to it. The first is recently, and it's actually in my CEO update for the board meeting this week, we have been asked to sit as advisory members on the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance board, which I think is fantastic because really they provide such leadership in the area. The other thing that we are doing is we have partnered, we've become one of 40 partners in a initiative under WaterSmart, which is a water initiative that is mapping out the basin to understand what's exactly happening with the river and also that larger watershed. So when we talk about watersheds, we talk about the North Saskatchewan River in particular, but we're also talking about those other bodies of water in the region that may not be connected directly to the river. We have not had a conversation outside of that about water. One of the in the EMRB's mandate in the regulation talks about a servicing plan, and water is one of those 7 areas in that servicing plan that we looked at. We don't want to duplicate the work that's already underway, and so I think our approach has been to become partners at these tables so that we can have really strong dialogue, have understanding, and be sitting at the table with these partners. So, and of course, EPCOR is, the shareholder of EPCOR is, of course, the City of Edmonton. So we see ourselves participating through those other bodies that are more knowledgeable, but sitting at the table and representing some of the interests that we know we need to think about. Specifically, when you talk about water, it's also about thinking about agriculture and food security. All of those things come into play. So we're looking at that and trying to have some conversations.
Thank you, Karen. My question was directly related to potable water, and I wouldn't suggest for a second that this organization would try to duplicate the work of other organizations. I think it's probably outside your scope to try to even do that. But has your organization polled the other organizations and come to a conclusion, yes, the problem's being looked at and solutions are being sought for 50 years out? Can you tell me that you have done that?
No, we haven't done that. We are just now have been invited to sit at that table with the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance, and we only recently joined the effort with WaterSmart. But I can certainly take that back and have conversations at both of those tables about that.
And just to conclude, Mayor Katcher, and I'll sign off. The watershed itself is important. I think that's above and beyond the scope of this organization, personal opinion. Drinking water and the supply of drinking water to make sure that this community, broad community, can survive for the next 100 years is of paramount importance. And I would encourage you to have at your fingertips a list of resources that can show concerned people like myself that yes, these things are being looked at, Mr. Kelly, and we're monitoring them, and we're tracking their progress, and we're offering input on and concerns that arise as this process works its way through the system. I think it's a big problem, and I think it needs increased emphasis. I couldn't stress that enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abatoye.
If I could just respond to Councillor Kelly, and I really appreciate that, and I think that's great insight. I can assure you that the board and Mayor Katcher herself, we have spoken about the future of the growth. If we're adding 1 million people, 500,000 jobs, water is going to be a key resource. So you're just asking us to take a further step to ensure that those stakeholders have a plan moving forward to support that growth in the supply of our drinking water for the health and safety of our communities. I totally commend that and agree with you there. We're seeing the challenges in southern Alberta. And if there's anything that's going to limit our growth, it's going to be the lack of water. So those conversations have started around at the board table. I think what you're asking for is just a little bit more of a focus on that to ensure that we're holding to account those that are responsible for processing the water, ensuring the infrastructure is in place, and then where do we play as municipalities into that to ensure that we have that ability to grow as communities and as a region. But I really wanted to say I appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye, you're next. Oh, push it again, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your presentation. And good to see you, Mayor Acker. I saw you from afar at the FCM conference. Well, we didn't really get a chance to chat, but good to see you again. So my first question is about the challenges that was mentioned in your presentation. So budget pressures because of reduction of support from the province, but again, increased prioritization. And my question to you is, with limited resources, should you be focusing on 1 to 3 items on your mandate rather than spreading yourself so thin with that amount of resources? So how do you intend to address this challenge with increased prioritization? Because I think that's within your control, right? With the budgets, that's kind of outside of your control. But with increased prioritization, I'm going to bite my tongue now. Prioritization, how do you intend to deal with that challenge?
So we've had a couple of meetings with the board in discussions around what are some of the key values and principles that the board has as we undertake that prioritization exercise and think about how we're going to move forward and what will the key priorities be that we'll undertake. So like I mentioned, we will be presenting scenarios to the board in the fall, because what we know is that we cannot go forward undertaking the amount of work that we've done in the past. We simply don't have the resources to do that. And so we'll come forward in the fall, in September, with scenarios that we'll present to the board. And the board will then approve a renewed budget going forward and a business plan that reflects the scenario that they choose to support. And it will just mean that over time we'll do less, and that it will take us longer to do the kinds of things that we've done in the past in a more regular and consistent way.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just to add on to that, even in our last budget cycle, we did remove some projects because we do realize that scope creep is a real thing, and there's never an end of opportunities to look at projects. So I think the board is being a lot more focused on what is our purpose and mandate as the region. It's more tying into the data and the stakeholders in the region so that we become the source of truth for that data, so that we can help facilitate other partnerships just to be able to collect and disperse that information. We're also probably going to be having to pivot if we cannot get the reallocation of our funding from the province on a more of a project basis. So the provincial government, time and time again, leans on the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board for a lot of data, a lot of information. So I think we just got to value that back to the province and go back with them and saying, if you'd like this work done, we're going to need a grant for that opportunity, because at the end of the day, we can't continue to download these costs on our municipalities. It's a lot of work on our staff individually as municipal members, but also it requires cash injection. So if there's a true partnership with the province, if this is going to move our region forward, I think we need to ensure that they are at the table. So.
Absolutely, and I absolutely agree with that comment. Thank you. And my second question is actually to you, Mayor. So how does the board plan to navigate differing initiatives or differing conflicts between that arises from member municipalities, right? So you have one municipality that has a priority that's completely differs from another. How do you handle that at this board?
Well, Mayor Katcher would be the expert. She's been around that table longer than anybody, but it's much like your council. So everyone comes in with a lens and a priority and a perspective. It's ensuring that we are coming to the table honestly, of showing what's important to us, the priorities, and having those good, deep conversations. We're not always going to agree. But I think when we can focus on the positive that we can achieve as a region, that's a start. So let's not go down a pathway where we know it's going to fail. Let's find some commonality amongst the region where we see success, we see we need to tackle. It's part of our mandate, and let's focus on those opportunities rather than delving into negativity that it's probably not going to end well for a single member or a couple members. I think we've done a tremendous amount of work just trying to get a better understanding. Because since I've been around in municipal politics in the old Accra days, there's continuing a rural-urban divide, and I think the board has done a tremendous job of just better understanding the differences. Me from an urban center is a lot different than one of the counties. We look at planning different, look at priorities a little differently. So even sharing our experiences around that table and making sure that we give the time for the voices around the table, I think helps ensure that we are moving in the same way forward. At the end of the day, it's democracy. We do have a voting structure. We always want to find consensus, but we also want to ensure that we are moving the region forward. So it's a challenge.
Well, thank you. But my hope is that you continue to encourage regional collaboration at that table.
It is too important not to. We can't do things alone, and the value we get by working together, you see that with your municipal neighbors, we see that as a region as well. So,
all right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm next on the speaking order. So if I can just compliment that, I think because I sit there at the MRB table, it's also healthy to have good discussion and debate, and not have 13 members always voting 100% for something, that you actually have people that are playing devil's advocate to bring other thought processes to the table. And I think that that's something that's very important, because otherwise, if it's just 13 yes, yeah, you only need one person showing up. Anyway, just supplementing yours. Question that I have for CEO Woodchuck. So last year I put a member's motion forward regarding the growth plan that was accepted. Am I expecting to see that in June? Or I know you had mentioned sometime. Do we know when that's going to be discussed?
That is, Mayor Katcher, that's a good question. I think we have been looking at that through the the work that we're doing with this new motion, because those three all came together at once. And I know we've also had conversations with your administration about how we bring that forward. So what I'll do is take that offline and have a conversation with CAO Fleming, and we'll get back to you on that.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'll just thank you for all the work that you do with the EMRB. CEO Woodchuck does an amazing job keeping 13 relatively in line. Councillor Nguyen, you're next.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor Acker and CEO Woodchuck. My question, I'm just going to leave it open-ended. You can make some comments about it, and it's in line with resources in the region. So what KPIs are we going to be seeing due to the implementation of RAMP in the next 5 to 10 years? Obviously, topsoil and farmland is an extremely valuable resource for our food production, and I would argue that our region is one of the the richest agricultural areas in Alberta. So what are we going to be physically seeing with the implementation of that will be able to kind of quantify the benefits of it?
Thank you for that question. I will have to send you something in writing about that because off the top of my head, I cannot remember them. But the board did pass earlier last year the KPIs related to the agricultural master plan. So those are now embedded in the growth plan. So there was initial work that was done related to what would the measures be around looking to see if we were making any gains through RAMP, and then there were specific KPIs that were identified and approved by the board. Off the top of my head, I cannot remember what they are. I think there are 3 or 4 of them, but there were also a series of documents that were developed that would monitor the progress. The other thing, Councillor Nguyen, that is underway is that all of the municipalities have to update their MDPs by December of this year to become compliant with RAMP, to ensure compliancy with RAMP. And then moving forward, we'll definitely see after those MDP updates the kind of progress that we're making.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll go on to round 2. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I think it's generally what I wanted to talk about has generally already been touched upon, but just to take it maybe a little bit further, the budget / scope creep issues that I think this organization is looking at. You indicated, and it's my understanding, you confirmed my understanding, that the mandate was to design and prepare a growth plan. It seems to me that things like agriculture are already administered through our Department of Agriculture with the provincial government, plus the farmers associations, and the list goes on. Flood control, I mean, I can pull up a floodplain map of all of Alberta in a heartbeat, and it's not rocket science to know what areas are going to flood and what aren't. So I wonder if, and I think you've alluded to it, I would encourage and maybe look for more color from either of you on what it is you think you might do to sort of neck this thing back down to a growth plan focus. And in your comments, if you could please tell me why it needs to be updated every 5 years, which is really only a 15 or 16% growth in population, as opposed to every 10 years. For instance, just to narrow down the effort and reduce the constraints and the manpower and financial resources necessary to keep this organization flowing. Comments would be welcome. Thank you.
Sure, I can start off with that. So the 5-year update is a small update. So it's looking at the KPIs that we want to measure. It's looking at how's it working and make slight adjustments to the growth plan, not a major overhaul, which is taking place more at the 10-year time. And the fact of the matter is, although it's only a 5-year growth, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth in this region over the last 10 years or 5 years. So what does that impact? Where does our transportation corridors need to accommodate if it's off our trends, off our growth projections? If we're seeing more absorption in some of the industrial parks, does that have any impacts? So fundamentally, as the growth board, I think agriculture, floodplains, there's a lot of good information out there, but what the board has the ability to do is partner and get that information from all those stakeholders and fill in that last mile piece. There's stuff our municipalities have that no others do. There's gaps in the information that others have. So if we become that repository of collecting that information, then it makes that data set so much more valuable for all those that, like the EPCORs or other environmental scientists that want to look at that information. So it's allowing us as individual municipalities to lean onto that information. And that also extrapolates into the ag lands. So where those prime agricultural lands are, ensuring that we're protecting those and not expanding or absorbing those in urban design until we need to. So I think there's a value of even just collaborating around the region to know what's happening in each other's backyards. And so we are all prepared when we go to the province and state that this is the #1 priority for this new road or new bridge that we need, because we see the impact that is more important to serve this member at this time for that priority growth that we're seeing. So it's allowing us not to be in competition with one another, but rather advocates for one another's priorities. So I think there's still tremendous value, but I agree with you. We need to be staying on the mandate that the province has created the regulations for us to follow, ensuring that we aren't going down and duplicating work that's already taken place by other organizations. Where we can, let's just work with them to get their information and help become that source of data. And I think we're doing a lot of efforts to ensure that any actions we take is focused completely on the 20, 50-year vision for this region. So
And I appreciate.
but Karen may have
Oh,
some.
sorry.
Maybe just to supplement, I think Mayor Acker is bang on in his response. The mandate for the EMRB says we will create a growth plan, a servicing plan, and that where we enable economic prosperity in the region. So I think that's really the fullness of the mandate. I think over the last few years have worked really hard to narrow down what our strategic plan and our business plan looks like with very focused initiatives. The board also has recently passed, I believe it would be 2 years ago, a new initiative assessment framework. And through that framework, every new initiative that comes forward, whether it be through the board, through the approval of a business plan with initiatives laid out in that business plan, or through member municipalities who might bring forward pieces of work, we need to go through that new initiative assessment framework. And essentially that framework looks at, are we in alignment with the mandate? Are we in alignment with the growth plan and the servicing plans? Does it also align with the board approved strategic plan and business plan, which for the current year of 2024 to 2027 has been unanimously approved by the board? And then are others doing the work? How is the work going to be paid for? So I think, there's been a real effort to be more focused, to be thoughtful in the work that's coming forward, and to make sure that the work that we're doing is tied into the growth plan and the servicing plan. And of course, there are 6 areas in that growth plan, which is now embedded in provincial regulation. And so it's those areas where the attention will be focused.
Thank you. It might be also, so I haven't obviously read all of your reports. I just don't have that kind of time. But a few years ago, I did try to slog my way through the Transportation Master Plan. And I don't mean to be critical, but it seemed to me that what you should be doing is looking at a high-level overarching approach, and I failed to see why the committee would spend time or paper or effort debating who's going to pay for it 50 years out. Because 50 years out, that thing's going to be long forgotten. It's the every decade updates, tuning in and adding some color as we go, that will have any meaning. And any other discussion and or detail, I think, is wasted. And I think that's your goal. My personal opinion, that's your mandate. An overarching regional approach, and leave the detail because it'll sort itself out on its own when the time comes. And thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your time here.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to come on for a second again as we're talking about transportation priorities. So if you can just explain the work that's being done right now on the 50-year IRTMP, who's funding it, what the expectations are, and why the province and the region plans for how many years out. If you'd like to just speak to that.
So the 50-year plan, the new piece of work that's underway right now, the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Network Plan, was initiated by the province. So the province came to the board in 2021, the Minister of Transportation, and asked the board to co-create a 50-year plan study on what we might need 50 years out from now, and to help think about that. And it's being fully funded by the province. All member municipalities have a seat at the table in terms of a technical working group, and the province itself, the ministry, comes back and reports in on the outcome of that work to the board. I believe it will be 4 times over the length of the entire project. why that kind of work is so important is if you think about the Anthony Henday, for example, the work on the Anthony Henday started in the 60s and 70s with the acquisition of land at that time, knowing that there would be a need for a ring road around the region. And so one's not going to assume that there's an upcoming ring road. I don't want to leave you with those thoughts. It's more giving an example of the types of thinking that go into how you plan to accommodate another million people and another 500,000 jobs in a very short period of time. The province came forward because they looked at the work of the IRTMP and sat at the table during that work. They were both at the technical working group and also at the task force that was chaired by Mayor Katcher, and are using that work as the stepping stone for that next 50 years. And it's their vision and their work and the work that they are tasked with doing that is really leading that work forward. So maybe, Mayor Katcher, if that has answered your question.
Yeah, I think it answers it enough as to who's funding the next piece, as we've talked about scope creep and priorities. So yeah, I think that's good. Thank you. Are there any additional questions? If not, I will thank you very much for coming out to our beautiful Fort Saskatchewan today. Oh, Councillor Harris just, okay, sorry. Sometimes there's delayed. Go ahead, Councillor Harris. No? Oh, okay. I'm not sure how you got on there, but all right. So thank you very much for coming out to our beautiful community today. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Thank you, Mayor Katcher, and congratulations on the Varma announcement for this area.
It's going to be just
Heartland.
East of us in Strathcona, but once again, it'll provide jobs, spin-off opportunities for us. So
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
great. Thank you. All right, the next item, yes, and you can leave, you don't have to stay. All right, the next item is Social Development Framework, Jennifer Hoyer, and I'll have you do introductions.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Jennifer Hoyer. I'm the Director of Family and Community Support Services. I am joined today by Scott Cameron from BASA Social Innovations. We are here to present an overview of the Social Development Framework and seek adoption by Council. The framework was approved in the 2023 municipal budget with the goal of establishing a plan to continue to collaboratively meet the needs of the community alongside the social sector. Administration has worked with BASA, residents, social agencies, and community partners over the last year, and what will be presented today is a reflection of the work that went into that document. I will now hand over to Scott to share those details.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm happy to be here and happy to be back in Fort Saskatchewan. We've come to get to know your community quite well over the past year, and what a lovely community, and always a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to present the Social Development Framework to you this afternoon, answer any questions that you may have. We like to describe this as a municipal document heavily informed by the community. And as we've worked through this process, it's not just about gathering information from the community, but actually working with the community around the recommendations and initiating some of the action moving forward on some of these initiatives. As Ms. Hoyer indicated, the mandate was really take a look at understanding the issues, some of the city roles and responses to reflect the commitment to an inclusive and welcoming community. So we started the process by taking a look at scoping and really understanding the expectations of the community. And at that time, we had a chance to meet with yourself, your worship, and other members of council to understand what would be important for you as we move forward in these conversations with the community. There's no question that growth is a significant driver, understating or underpinning the work of the social development framework. Even before Dow announced the expansion, growth was top of mind for members of the community and community organizations that we were speaking with. And it was met with a certain amount of cautious optimism, recognizing that with growth come certain challenges within the social realm. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about the framework itself, and then we'll talk about some of the initiatives or the strategies to address the framework. This is the framework summarized in a graphic form. At the center is the why. Why have a social development framework? And it's really the end goal. We heard from the community about ensuring that as the community grows, that the social well-being that the community has become familiar with and expects will continue. The ring leading out is some of the how, and we established some of that how by having conversations with community organizations about assets. Where are we starting from? Let's build on strengths. Let's start with what we already know, start with what we have, and understand how we got there in the first place. And then the outer ring is the way forward. Some of the methodologies required to ensure that the municipality is always part of that social development framework. And I'll get into each one of those just a little bit here. We heard folks talk so positively about their community, recognizing that one of the greatest protective factors is the ability to be connected and have a sense of belonging, which in a growth scenario means that that's one of the central tenets of a social development strategy, is how to ensure that residents, new and those that have been in the community for generations, continue to feel that sense of connectedness and belonging. The community talked about education, health, mobility, reducing poverty, ensuring that you have a safe community for everyone to enjoy, understanding the strength and diversity, understanding the importance of a strong social services sector, and ongoing engagement and participation in the work. There were three big themes that came out of the asset work that we did with the community. First of all was active development. That social development doesn't happen to us, it happens because of us. That anything that needs to be done by the community in partnership with community organizations, other levels of government, but it's an active process. The second piece was talking about stewardship, and the community provided us lots of examples around stewarding not just the environment that people enjoy and interact within, but stewarding the initiatives and the investments that it takes to have a strong social well-being in the community. And that is rooted in the community. This is your community. What happens in Fort Saskatchewan is going to look different than what happens in other communities around you and in other communities across the province. So what is it that makes Fort Saskatchewan its own unique character and culture? In terms of supporting social development, we talked about municipal roles and commitments. Given that social development is a very dynamic and complex environment, there's a number of different roles and commitments and opportunities for the municipality to play, and it's not going to be the same in every initiative because of that dynamic nature. So we've talked about a number of different roles and responsibilities that the municipality could take, recognizing that those roles and responsibilities are going to change over time, even on the same initiative. We talk about community continuous monitoring, that one of the things that the human services sector has difficulty doing is taking a look at the big picture. So many of the groups and organizations are funded to do something specific. So there is a role for the municipality to be able to take a look at social well-being in its entirety and having more of that macro view and watching for some of those trends. And we also talk about the social infrastructure, and I liken it to on the economic side of a community, having a strong business community, having a strong sense of business actually helps with the economic growth. And the same thing is true on the social services side, that having a strong social infrastructure means that many of those things that are going to be faced by your citizens don't necessarily fall in your laps as a municipality, but rather into the organizations that have the knowledge and expertise to be able to help people address some of their complex needs. In terms of the municipal roles and commitments, the community is talking about its desire to have a municipality that's practical, inclusive, informed, coordinated, adaptable. Sometimes when we set policies in place, we see those policies, or the community can see them as being rigid, when sometimes they need to be adaptable and be morphed over time. In terms of balancing roles, we've described a number of roles in the document, in the summary document. What is the best fit? What is sustainable for the municipality in terms of some of those roles in support of the human services sector? What's appropriate? What's expected? And what we've found is that when we name some of these roles and responsibilities, it allows allows community organizations the opportunity to have a direct conversation with the municipality, saying, what we really need from you is this, and know that it means the same thing to you as a municipality as it does to them, so that you can have a very real conversation about helping to support their growth and development. And as I said, the continuous monitoring is an important way to be able to monitor what's changing. As you're heading into these significant periods of growth, who is coming into the community? What are their needs? What's missing? How are their needs being met? And how do we gather that information from the groups and organizations that are on the front lines, understanding people as they come in requesting supports and services? And finally, the strong social infrastructure. As I said, having a strong business community means that you have a strong economic outlook for the community. Having a strong social infrastructure means that you have a strong social outlook in the community. So what do these community groups and organizations need to be able to work and learn together? Who are they supporting? What do they need to be able to help improve service levels, program opportunities, and supports for individuals and families? If I take a look over the decades of doing this work at some of the work that we did in the early 2000s around ending homelessness, I'm almost embarrassed, but it was the best information we had at the time. So this is a very dynamic and changing environment, and there's always new developments that are happening in the human services sector. And having a municipality that's keeping their finger on the pulse of those changes and adaptations and bringing that information back to the community is a very important part of the social infrastructure. So again, as a framework, we have the why in the center, the how in the middle section, and the what in terms of the municipal roles. As we started to develop the framework, then the questions started to come, okay, so now what? How do we actually start this work? And rather than come up with 93 recommendations, half of which may or may not fit in your application, we're very specific, or tried to be very specific based on what we were hearing from the community. And so it's a start. It's meant to bridge the framework in terms of having a framework and then beginning to move the work forward. The community identified 4 priorities. First of all, how do we get this work started? What does working with the community look like? How do we steward a strong human services sector? And what do we need in terms of some of our social infrastructure based on some of the needs that are emerging? In terms of getting started, we heard the community saying, okay, so what's next? This has been great. Now where do we go with this? In terms of the system stewardship, we're hearing from the community that burnout is something real. Within the human services sector, you've got people that are working with some of the most complex needs in the community, and that is demanding work. And it's tiring work, and it can only be sustained for a certain amount of time. And so burnout is something that's real in the sector. Working with the community, certainly there's lots of conversation about industrial growth. What does that mean? What does 8,000 temporary jobs over the next 5 to 10 years look like for us as a community? What does 400 to 500 permanent jobs and those families look like for us from a human services perspective? And then from the social infrastructure, how do we work together better to meet the needs of our clients? So we looked at 3 big ideas in each of those 4 areas. In terms of getting started, it starts by adopting the framework. Adopting the framework is more than just putting a stamp on this, making a motion at council today, but rather sending a signal to the community that we have something that we're going to begin to work with and use as a guiding document moving forward. We suggested an internal working group on social well-being. So having Jennifer and her team be able to work with other municipal departments to talk about what does social well-being look like, whether you're in transit, whether you're in parks, recreation, utilities. Every department in the municipality has the ability to impact the well-being of individuals and families in the community. And then being able to look at social development through the lens of investments and from a people and a financial perspective. Are we actually generating the results that we're looking for and being intentional about those investments moving forward? Working with the community, certainly with the growth, and the prior group is talking about affordable housing, getting ahead of and ensuring that housing is always on your radar screen in terms of growth, because it is one of the most fundamental parts of well-being for individuals and families. Looking at a cross-sectoral task force, you have already established in your community strong working relationships with industry, with business, with the community organizations, and so bringing those groups and organizations together with deep intention around addressing growth as the community progresses over the next few years is an important step. And we also want to recognize the significance of community building events and activities. We may think that they're fun things for people to do, but they really contribute to community safety. They contribute to significant protective factors such as connection and belonging. For newcomers coming into the community, that's where they get to understand the culture of the community. That's where they get to meet people. That's where they get to step outside of their day-to-day life and be part of something bigger. From a system stewardship sector, it's the acknowledgement and the ongoing acknowledgement from the municipality that the human services sector is an important part of the community. We heard that mental health and burnout is something very real for community organizations. So how do we help support peer mental health and wellness? Because as we see people leave the sector, and we know, we can understand from a business perspective that high staff turnover means a disruption in service, or in a disruption and a costly disruption for business. In the human services sector, that loss or that turnover has a direct impact on individuals and families in the community, because now they have to start from scratch with a new counsel or a new support person. So ensuring that ongoing health and mental wellness within the sector is important. And also supporting sector coordination and support across the network. Many of these organizations are working from their own silos based on some of the funding that they receive and the capacity of their own organization. So how can, as a municipality, we support them coming together to support that ongoing learning and development and relationship, which is so important when it comes to understanding the needs of individuals and families in the community. And finally, in terms of the social infrastructure, there's a number of 3 recommendations that we're making. And at this point, it's important to congratulate you on doing this work now, so that you are looking at things like a community coordinated access system, data sharing MOUs and protocols, and coordinated service delivery systems, while some of the more complex issues are bubbling under the surface and you're not dealing with a crisis. So we've looked at some of the other processes that work well, especially out of housing and homelessness, where the coordinated community access means that individuals can show up in a door and be known by name, so that they're receiving direct supports and services that's coordinated between organizations, as opposed to going and shopping around from agency to agency looking for services and supports to meet their needs. This is an ongoing process. I would say at this point we're sort of approaching the action plan stage and implementation phase. But as some of these actions are taking place and the implementation is happening, it's understanding what is happening, what is the data that's being generated, what are the trends that are emerging, the growth trends, how do we continue to do the engagement, how do we circle back and reestablish new priorities as they emerge, and the cycle continues. And with that, I will wrap up my presentation and receive any comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris had texted me, said put me on the list. He's having troubles with his. So Councillor Harris, you're first on questions.
Thanks, Your Worship. Scott, good to see you. It's been a lot of years. I'm glad to see you had a chance to work on this important framework for us going forward. Question to Jennifer, I guess, and to yourself. We have a report format so that if anything comes to council for approval, we put in there what the impact is from a diversity standpoint, or does the recommendation for action coincide with our strategic plan? Is it fair to say we're going to have to modify our standard report format for council edification purposes to include reference to the social framework?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, I think that from my point of view, what we would be looking to do is ensure that we are looking at social well-being as at the planning stage. So often that does happen through reports. And you might see it surface there. However, I think you might see it surface in some of the areas that already exist. It'll just be about making that a priority to discuss.
Yeah, I asked the question because the document was quite extensive, and I can appreciate why. And obviously, if it's community engagement, that's an important thing. I guess what I was looking for is how will a council of the future, this council and in the future, be able to draw a reference to things that are moving and changing in many respects a lot, but still ensure that we remain consistent to our policies, our protocols, and our priorities. And because when I looked at the document, I was trying to draw a reference to it in terms of how am I going to make decisions as an elected official, referencing all of these moving pieces. And there's a lot of stuff. So I see it as prescriptive. Is that a fair statement to make? A question to ask?
Yes, thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Harris. Thank you for that clarification. I think that the recommendation that asks us to go back internally and look at our processes and have an internal, potentially working group or looking at how we're making plans is for just that reason, is that we do have a lot to consider. So how do we ensure these things are coming paramount in our considerations and for what we bring forward to council?
Great, thanks. If there's more reflection on it, I think that'll make it a stronger document and a better process for decision making or to guide decision making. So thank you very much. Thanks, Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Councillor Blizzard, questions?
Yes, but I also have something to say first. So I'm going to be a little honest here. When somebody comes forward with a budget, say for a pool, and they say we're going to dig a hole here, I just find that easier to understand. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. So if my questions sound different or odd, sorry, but yeah, I just find it is a tough subject. There's just so many branches of it. So I guess I'll start here. So after this is adopted, what happens? How does it affect us? What does it affect you? Do you have a new side to your job, or does this just give you more guidelines?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, thank you so much for that question. And it is a big topic to talk about. So thank you for that as well. You know, I think once this is adopted or after potentially it is adopted, we get to work. But what's exciting about the way that we conducted this engagement and the way that we created this product is that that's already started. So some of the suggestions or recommendations that you've seen, we've already begun to look at that and look at how we can hear what the community is telling us with the resources that we have and look for efficiencies and be effective. You know, I don't think you're going to see big swaths, but what you are going to see is maybe mindful shifts in the way that we're supporting the sector. And then again, gathering data along the way so that if we do need to make some larger shifts or come back and talk to council more, that's really rooted in sound evidence.
Okay, so I've got a few more, so I'll come around again. But I guess, well, going with that, I heard some comments about people leaving the sector, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around the sector. Is it only people working in human services? Are you talking about people that volunteer at the Lions Club? I'm not quite getting all of that.
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, yeah. The sector could be any of those folks. Typically, we are talking about people that are employed by social agencies. So, you know, your major social agencies within the city. And, you know, we do see a lot of turnover for various reasons in those organizations. And so when we talked about people leaving, it was just to acknowledge that if we can support organizations better to have better retention, we know that we can support the community better in the long term.
Okay, now there's a couple more, I think, but you can go around.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon, you're next.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your presentation today. I thought the framework was extremely well done, so thank you for all the hard work on that. My question is on the section of the framework that talks about continuous monitoring. So I'm just wondering if you believe that we have the resources to continually monitor, given the consistent growth of need in this area. I just feel like keeping up with the changing landscape is the battle right now.
Through your worship to Councillor Macon, that's a great question, and resources are always finite, so it's something we have to pay attention to. I believe that if we don't continue to monitor, we're not necessarily using our resources to the best of our ability, so it's something that we need to commit to, and we need to figure out how to do in an effective way so that we know that the time, energy, dollars that we're putting into this work are being used to best support the community.
Thank you.
You're good? Okay, thank you. I'm next on the speaking order. So the question that I have, because it says, you know, what's your next steps forward, and in there is buried financial commitment. So I guess the question that I have is, Fort Saskatchewan, unlike Edmonton, doesn't have wraparound services. So when you talk about next steps as far as providing more, and we already provide a community coordinator and a family violence coordinator, I guess I'm questioning, what do you see as more? Because I'm quite questioning when you talk about for a homeless person, there should be a door for them to go to. So just let's talk about that. Share with me. Oh, you turned yourself off. There you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know that more is the right word, as much as how do we strengthen some of the processes and procedures so that we can better maximize the knowledge and the capacity of existing organizations for the benefit of the residents themselves. So as an example, so I use the example of coordinated access, triage, so on. By incorporating better data collection systems and processes of understanding what people are experiencing and what their needs are, then you're able to coordinate services between organizations. But that takes a level of coordination and collaboration between organizations where they have to kind of let go of some of their own individual organizational processes and come together to talk about how could we do this together so that we can maximize the resources that we currently have. So it's more in terms of better service to the citizens, but to the extent that you maximize what existing resources there are in the community, and then you can take a look at whether there's something more required beyond that.
Through your worship, I would just add and maybe give a bit of an example. I don't think we're looking necessarily for more, but in Fort Saskatchewan, we've been quite lucky through the years to function with informal ways of sharing data and working together in the social services sector. As we grow and as we have turnover and new relationships established, the informal ways of sharing and supporting folks become a little more difficult. And what this plan asks us to do is to work together to create some formal ways so that as we grow and as people change, community residents that require support are not the ones that are losing out, that we have those processes in place to best support them. So not necessarily new resources or new services, but how do we ensure that the services that we have continue to work together through change and challenge so that community residents are supported.
Okay, so I think I heard more through the presentation, more staff, but we'll leave that till motion's on. So my second question comes to then, how does this framework then tie in our provincial government resources, and how does it tie in to the rest of the region resources? Because I'm not sure I saw any reference to that in there. Because I know City of Edmonton and Calgary, they go to the province, say, we need money for our homeless. We're a mid-sized city. How does this framework, is there a spot in there that actually talks about it that I missed?
To your worship, no, I don't think that you did miss it. I think the framework asks us to, monitor the situation, evaluate what's needed, and then identify an action plan. So the action plan might be that we need resources, but those resources don't necessarily come from the municipality. Maybe at that point we look at, where do we go for that? Is there a grant that we can access that? Is it an organization within the community that needs some support to do more of that? Again, that's why we layered in the municipal roles. What is our role here? And making sure that as we grow within administration and change through administration and councils, we're really coming back to that when we're making decisions.
Okay, I'll have some comments on debate. Councillor Abatoye?
Thank you for your presentation. So I'm confused by here. I'm confused when you say we don't need more resources, because I think this is good planning and you're being proactive by doing this, right? Because we know that there's going to be a huge, population growth in our community, and it's important for us to be prepared for that. In the package that was sent to us, and this sentence really caught my eyes. It says that our people are experiencing complex challenges and we are stretched to provide them with the support they need. And how will we be able to handle significant population growth, right, if we're experiencing challenges right now, even with the people that we are dealing with? In the request for decision, it says that there is no financial implication as a result of this framework. how do we intend to handle the challenge we have on hand without asking for additional resources?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoy, the quote that that you're reciting here is one that we heard when we spoke with other organizations and saying we're struggling to meet the need with what we have. The conversations then dove even deeper. What would you need? What are we currently in need of? And that's what we built our themes around. So that coordinated access, that peer support, things that could help support the sector, support folks doing the work so that they are able to continue to meet the needs. However, to be completely transparent, with growth, as we grow, it's quite likely we're going to need a lot in this community, not just in the social services sector, but in other areas as well. So at this moment, there isn't financial implications. However, as we grow, we may come back and have to discuss that. What my hope is that we're able to do that, and it's built upon any request, any discussion we might be having is built upon strong data, experiences, and has gone through, evaluation so that we are sure that we are making good, sound decisions.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. I had a question around key performance indicators about from the framework, but it sounds like you don't. That's your next step, right? In terms of getting your action plan and whatnot, right? Okay, that'll be all for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. A couple specific questions from the report, just minor things that I didn't understand. Page 83 of our package, page 35 of the report, second paragraph starts with an ideal starting place for Fort Saskatchewan would be to begin utilizing current resources to collect, analyze, and communicate quarterly data statistics. I would have thought we were already doing that.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, this might be a two-part answer. We're both jumping on here. I think as I'm absorbing that, and certainly as it was intended, was that FCSS is able to provide some of that support within the sector and to other organizations that they potentially aren't currently utilizing, that we are able to do a bit more to help them collect data and to be able to have good sound decisions within their organization. So that would be a good first step is what what was intended there.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, I would suggest that while FCSS is collecting data, FCSS is one of many funders that most of these organizations are receiving dollars from. And every funder has a different set of demands, a different set of KPIs, a different set of metrics that they ask organizations to collect. So part of this comment is about how do we have that conversation more globally so we can take a look at what are those large indicators that give us a broader sense of what's happening in the community as opposed to individual indicators being supplied to individual funders. So there is that coordination piece that's required. And it goes beyond whatever FCSS is funding because you're looking at this from a sector perspective as opposed to just a service delivery perspective through FCSS.
How would I get that from that paragraph? I read the report. How would I get what you both said from that paragraph? And you don't have to answer. That's partly rhetorical, okay? One other specific question, if I may. Appendix D, which is for Council 115 of our materials. It's a demographic analysis, and I think it's maybe just a typo, but you truly made me scratch my head. Between 112 of the report and 113, on page 112 specifically, second from the bottom, the category is percentage with or without a high school diploma, 42%. Edmonton, Fort Saskatchewan is 45%. Wouldn't that be 100? There's got to be something I'm missing there.
through your worship to Councillor Kelly, that one gets me all the time as well, and I would almost always defer that to my my research and evaluation supports. It really refers to high school completion, and the language around that is direct from Statistics Canada. So we're just simply reporting it in the way that it's recorded through the census. So it would indicate that you know what, I at the risk of getting it wrong, I would prefer to make sure that I give a good solid response to Jennifer, that she can get back to you on that one, because that one admittedly trips me up every time.
Okay.
I'm not questioning the validity of the data, simply the ability to better interpret it for you.
Mayor Katcher, I just want to have a quick summary on this, and then I'll sign out and come back in. It makes no sense. And if you don't understand it, and you put it in, and I'm reading it, and I'm supposed to understand it, how does that work? So I just encourage you for the future, change the wording to what it actually means, or take it out. I don't care which. But I get frustrated when I read reports and I see stuff like that, and I go, what the heck is going on here? So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I think my question has been touched on a couple times. In the report, it talked about qualitative versus quantitative data, not versus, and quantitative data, and the mixed use of them to be able to gauge the overall health of our social framework in the community. How confident are we in being able to obtain firm quantitative data to be able to definitively say that, you know, our community is doing extremely well right now, or oppositely?
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, I just want to ensure I understand. You're just asking, do we feel that we could collect quantitative data outside of the work that we directly do, like that other organizations are completing?
I guess my question is more, how much quantitative data can we obtain versus, like, is it 90% qualitative that we're going to be using to gauge analysis on this, or is there, you know, is there a 50-50 split between hard data that we can use to say definitively this is how the community is doing?
Yeah. Okay, through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, thank you for that clarification. I would say it would vary from topic to topic. Sometimes we're going to be more involved in something, and the qualitative stuff that comes out of that, the information that comes out of that, is really going to lead the decisions. Other times we might be doing things like looking for evaluations or surveys, and we're going to get a lot of quantitative. So it's going to really depend on the topic. In terms of whether or not I think that we're connected with organizations in a way that we're able to do this, I do feel that we are able to go forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Round two, Councillor Blizzard.
Just a little bit more, and I think it's been touched on, but so you've said that there's no expenses to this, no additional for this year, I'm assuming. But are you looking at in the fall that we'll see something attached to this, or is this just a kind of like a strat plan for the city, a guiding document for you?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, I would say it is definitely like a strat plan or a guiding document. Again, transparency, I'll add that, we do monitor all the time the growth coming into the city, the growth coming into our schools, hearing what our partners and agencies are telling us. And I wouldn't be truthful if I didn't tell you that we're hearing, and we know by the demand on our services that there is going to be a need to either meet them differently, look at our service levels, or increase resources at some point. However, that not as a direct reflection of this plan, but rather as what we're dealing with as a whole as a community.
Okay, thanks. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I'm next in the speaking order. I just want to touch on what Councillor Kelly had said about the high school completion and the fact that there's conflicting. Is when you get that information from the census, does that 45% of people who are over the age of 18 or 45% of all people who probably aren't even in school right now? Or like youth and under 18 and grade 12s and that.
Your Worship, I really wish I could give you more of that definitive information, and typically my researcher is over my shoulder in terms of being online and listening, and would weigh in on that. In fact, he asked if I'd like him to be here, and so my apologies that I wish I could give you more definitive. The engagement side is my strength. The research side I leave to my researchers. So I will make sure that you get that information and any interpretation that comes with it.
So my next question is to Mr. Fleming then. So I'm hearing maybe there's some tweaks that have to be made to this, and the motion today is to adopt it. So if there's some tweaks and a few changes that need to be made, what would you like done with this today?
I think, Your Worship, this particular one refers to an appendix, so I don't think there's a need to not go forward because of that. We'll get it clarified and cleaned up. If there's anything in the actual body of the report that council feels is material, you could do a referral motion back. But from what I've heard so far, I don't know if I've heard anything quite like that yet. But it's at the will of council, for sure.
Okay, I'll think about that because it says as attached as Appendix A, so that's really what we're approving here today. So I'll let council think about that. Councillor Kelly and then Councillor Harris.
There seems to be a gamut of councillors here. If we look on the right of center, we have Councillor Macon, who thought the report was fantastic and presumably understood every bit of it. And somewhere just left of center, perhaps Councillor Blizzard, who's questioning what's going on. And if that's the case, Mark May, far left of center. I got into it, and then I actually looked up the word framework. And the definition that made sense to me is a basic structure underlying a system, concept, or text. I'm an accountant. A basic structure to me is a basic structure. And it seemed to me, and this is where I'd like your comment, please, because it seemed to me when I read this, that this report was more of a summary of the current thoughts and thinking within the social services aspect of a municipality or generally, as opposed to a basic structure. Now, I might be wrong. That's where I want your comments, because I'm looking for a basic structure, and what I'm finding is a summary of current thoughts, much like you described in your opening comments when you said, I think you said 10 years ago when we talked about homelessness, we now talk about it completely differently. I think here you're talking about the subject as opposed to giving a framework. And if there is a framework, I need to have it pointed out to me, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Kelly. The framework is the circle. It starts with the why. Why are we doing social development in the first place? It's for the purpose of social well-being for individuals and families in the community. That's the why. The how comes from some of the experiences of the community, but it's also helping to guide decisions and actions moving forward for the municipality. That concepts like stewardship, active participation, and social infrastructure are critical to how social development moves forward in the community. The what is what's required of a municipality. This is a complex system. understanding different roles and responsibilities for the municipality, recognizing that in different situations, different roles and responsibilities are required. In certain situations, as Ms. Hoyer has identified, what the community needs from you is advocacy. Sometimes what they need from you is the ability to be able to convene groups, to be able to have a conversation. Sometimes what they need from a municipality is the ability to be able to coordinate services, to bring in new technologies, to be able to do research. So there's a number of different roles and responsibilities that can't be consistent in every application. We talk about the other role in terms of evaluation and monitoring. This is a very dynamic system. It's not as predictable as some other aspects of our of community. And it talks about the importance of a social infrastructure. So much of the social development realm happens outside of the mandate or the responsibility of the municipality. Yet the citizens are always looking to the municipality to be able to play a role and to provide some guidance and assurance that we're moving in a good and consistent way. So those are really the elements of the framework moving forward. Those are the elements that should remain true, regardless of whether you're taking a look at this topic next year or 10 years from now. As long as you're maintaining those elements of the framework, you have a strategy to be able to move forward and create a foundation upon which the rest of the community can understand where is the municipality in this world of social development.
You're done.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Harris, you're next.
So I'm seeing this as a decision-making model or a tool to make decisions to help us apply resources in appropriate ways. We're in the process of developing an asset management plan at the present time. We have been for quite some time. And that asset management plan allows us to assess the quality of infrastructure to determine where we apply our scarce resources and when. Would you suggest that this framework has some relevance to an asset management plan for physical infrastructure as opposed to what we're talking about here? It's the social infrastructure of our community. Because without some opportunity to use it in a constructive and an objective manner, I'm not sure why we would have it other than it's a feel-good document. So do you see any relevance to this to being a decision-making model for social development? Is that kind of what we're trying to get at?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, I think that is actually a really great connection. The asset management tool gives us the ability to look at things that are tangible and that we can hold on to. And this tool maybe looks at things that are less tangible and things that we have to dive into differently. So I think that's a really great connection and certainly one that I'll take away because it helps for explaining this for sure.
Well, the biggest challenge in adopting this, from my mind, is going to be how we ultimately use it as that objective tool to make conscious decisions. And so there's so much stuff in here that could conceivably we could run afoul of by not adhering to our protocols or our policies in that case. So, and it was a question, but it's also a statement going forward too. So we'll have this discussion when we are finished this question period, but those are some of the things that I think should be prepared for. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blizzard.
Kind of looks like we're all done. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Sure. Go ahead.
I'll make the motion and then explain myself. I'll make a motion that Council adopt the Social Development Framework as attached as Appendix A to the Administrative's report dated June 11th, 2024. Okay. And in speaking to that, while I struggle with the whole thing around it, I feel that it's more for your area as a guiding document. So I still feel that there's value in it if it's going to help you help go forward with dealing with the different agencies and different aspects. I have no issue with it.
Okay, thank you. The motion is accepted. It's been spoken in favor. I'll open it up for discussion and debate. Go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
I think Councillor Harris touched on, or at least built upon, my expressed concerns. if I vote to adopt this social development framework, I truly don't know what I'm committing the community to going forward. I think that that commitment should be part of the request for decision, if nothing else. And maybe I'm missing it, and I certainly, if I am, I welcome you pointing out to me what it is that you as a presenter and you as a person that'll work with it, see this committing us to going forward. And I'd like a clear statement, please.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, for myself, who would be working with this document, and anyone else in administration, I do think it is a document that holds us accountable to ensuring that we are doing exactly what the framework asks, situating any decisions we have based on, social well-being. How are we going to do that? What do we need to do that? As we make a plan to do that, how are we monitoring that? How are we reporting that back to the community? All of the recommendations that get us started in the next, we asked for the next 2 to 3 year plan, situate us on working together and trying to really be efficient within the sector. And then it asks us to go back and look at that. How are we doing with that? Monitor it, evaluate it. So for myself, I think for myself to use it, for myself to stay committed to that and be held accountable like that, I feel good about that. But also for anybody that may work in this position in years to come, I feel that it is a good document to have that keeps us connected to the community, keeps us hearing what they're saying, and working collaboratively with our partners.
I have to profess a certain amount of, or a lack of understanding still, and I mean no offense, but I'm struggling here. I didn't see in the report anything that like you referred to, and that's really what I'm driving at. You've got a picture in your brain of how you're going to approach this. I don't see it, and I don't see that picture or that plan of action in writing in front of council, and I wonder why. And without it, I struggle to make a decision. That's really where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris, you're next.
There's no question that this is such a omnibus kind of a statement, policy statement or guidance document that we would have to work with it over time. So I'm kind of torn. Part of me wants to refer it back to administration, notwithstanding Councillor Blizzard's motion. And part of me is prepared to accept it as an evolutionary document that if we get into it and realize that it's icky. And when I say icky, I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just hard to get your arms around it and to understand it, because the whole social dimension is sometimes so confusing to most of us. It's certainly confusing to me. So I think we'd have to see how it would work in the next steps that ultimately, I guess, administration is suggesting we would come back, or they would come back with, so that we could see how we would implement this thing in a meaningful way to make relevant decisions as it relates to the social elements of our community, those icky things. And I don't mean icky negative. It's just, it's hard to get your arms around it, as I said. So we can look at an asset management plan, and that's why I asked the question as a guidance. So we have to fix this pipe in this part of the city because it is going to fail. And if it fails, we're going to have a situation like they have in the city of Calgary at the present time. I think they have an asset management plan, but they didn't see this one coming. And so the question is, what do we not see coming in relation to our social relevance in our community? So that's kind of my thought in terms of this. In one sense, I can see adopting this thing with the proviso that it's an evolutionary document, and that if we run into it and we see, oh, that's an unintended consequence, I didn't intend for that. Let's back it up maybe about 15 paces and then come back at it. So I don't want to be held hard and fast to something that we're still not necessarily committed to in relation to understanding, as Councillor Kelly says, it's hard to understand how all of this stuff ties together. And to make reasonable, objective decisions for the benefit of our community is the ultimate goal, I suspect, in an area that is kind of icky. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'm on the fence, but I can certainly see where administration's coming from. But we need to spend some more time with this for sure, because yes, we are aware of it evolving, but now it's in front of us. And what do we do with it? So let's see where it goes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Batoye.
Yeah, thank you. For someone that's always supports social services, I struggle with this as well. And I wonder if we're bringing this forward too early, because I was looking for things like, things that you're planning to work on, which is like things like the action plan. So I honestly would support a referral of this because I think that we need to know like things like resource allocation, right? What kind of implementation plan do we have? But I don't see that. I feel like everything is so esoteric and it's just hard to really lay one's hands on it. But again, I know it's for you. So if it's for you, then is this supposed to be an administrative procedure instead of you get what I mean? Instead of council actually approving this, is it supposed to be something that administratively is a procedure that you work with? And then when you have your action plans and then council is able to see in real terms what the indicators or the key performance indicators, and that was one of the questions I prepared actually to ask, because I didn't see any of those, right? But it feels like that's a future thing, so I support the social framework in the overall sense of it, but it's just really hard to really understand what it is that we're driving at from an action or implementation perspective, and so I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can support it the way it is, but definitely will support a referral if that comes forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you. I'll support the motion. I do believe that this is a guiding document that, as was stated, is usable and workable with the department that it is meant for. And in such a difficult landscape of social development, anything that we can provide for them to help them guide their decisions and how we do this work is really, really important. And I don't think that this document is the end all be all and that it's never going to change, but I do think it is a valuable tool that will help them now. And as Jennifer was saying, it will help them. It is something that will help her and her department through the next few years. So I will support the motion and hopefully it will pass so they have some direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, good discussion, and I'd agree with some of the hesitation expressed by fellow councillors. I'm going to support the motion, though. I appreciate the confidence that Ms. Hoyer has, and it seems like this would be an asset to the work that she has underway, and give her the guiding direction that her and her department needs to move forward to increase to increase our knowledge and connectivity amongst this field. It's certainly not an area that I have a ton of experience in, but I'd be happy to support the work that you've laid out before us here and moving forward with it.
Okay, thank you. I'm next on the speaking order. I've struggled with this one as well. I said, for me, I thought there should be some tweaks in it. My biggest concern is we adopt something, then you have changes in council, you have changes over time, and administration comes back and goes, oh, you have this framework, and basically it's, you should be supporting it. And I support support a social framework. Absolutely, I do. But it doesn't talk about the fact, and I know you said, well, it talks about, well, an action could be provincial or federal government. Well, that should actually be in there to say, you know, if we're going to move forward with something, we need to have the support of these other levels of government. I honestly believe that. You know, I think it needs to talk about, and I know it talks about financial, it talks about what human services or wraparound or financial. I think there needs to be a layering of that so that people actually understand. You come back on a report and say, well, we need more money for this because in administration's opinion, we're not meeting it. Now, I'll use the everyone can play. I'll use that one because the question, are we meeting it? Probably not, because there's a demand for it. Is there changes that need to be made to it? Doesn't answer that. Or is it just a question of you're saying, well, maybe we just want you to add more money to it because we feel there's a greater need. And I feel that some of that is lacking through this. And I see it more as a guiding document, as a framework. When you say framework, that's the structure that takes us to where we're going, but a guiding document says, okay, this is kind of where we see things. So I think even the name needs to be changed on it. So I'll see where council wants to go with this. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. It would seem to me that this report, this document, if it's a valuable piece of information and of use to yourself, that it would continue to be so whether or not council adopts it. Correct? So even if council doesn't adopt it, that's not restricting your use of the document. So what if council, and I hesitate to use this phrase, but what if council accepted this report or this document for information?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, that's right. We can certainly still do work on this document. Part of the reason that we came forward for adoption really was there was a lot of work that the social sector, that community residents, that industry, that businesses put into telling us what they were seeing in the community and what they wanted us to bring back and what they wanted to see as part of this document. So part of asking for the adoption was to formally say we support the work that went into this, we hear you, and we're working with you.
You wish to put an amending motion on?
I do, thank you. I would move that we take out the word adopt from the motion and substitute in its place except for information.
So the amending would be to remove adopt and replace with for information.
Or, yes, except for information.
Or
yes.
except for information. So as she's typing that up, you can speak to your motion?
Yeah, you bet. I think this is a reasonable compromise from my perspective up here. I too have, as a counselor, I'm committed to what I do. So if I say I'm adopting this, that is my guiding light going forward. And 4 years from now, when I'm not on council, as was referenced, administration, and you've moved on to a different post as well, Jennifer, administration can come back and say, you got this thing, man, we got to live with it. I don't want to do that because I don't understand it. If it works for you, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but if it works for you, then I encourage you to use it. But I don't think that council needs to adopt it to have it work as a tool for the community. And you've already indicated that. So I think it's a reasonable compromise.
Okay, thank you. We'll let her work on that. So we'll only speak to the amending motion to remove adopt and replace it with accepting for information. Councillor Harris, you're first.
Well, I was going to move a motion to refer this back to administration for further work on how we would reflect on the framework and how it will be employed. Because I think we've touched on it in a couple of ways, that ultimately it can be a document for and a guide and a tool for our administration that works with the social services milieu. And ultimately, it will be the litmus test of how they will go forward to bring things to the council table that ultimately have to be resourced during a budget discussion, for example, or a good thing needs to be undertaken. And generally, that is a decision-making process that we have been employed to, or we've been put in power to effect. So I think I guess the information thing, the only caveat I put on it is we receive it as information, but then it kind of just nothing happens. But I think something should happen. And that's why I think that administration has indicated they're prepared to continue work on this thing in an action plan context. And those are the sorts of things that I'm hearing each member of council that's spoken today saying, that they're a little unsure of really what it means and how it's going to be employed. And Councillor Kelly's point was bang on, as far as I'm concerned, is how are we going to use this thing? And if we decide we're not going to follow it, we better have a good reason why we're not going to follow it. And we have to know what that good reason is. And right now, I'm not sure what those good reasons would be. So if we receive it as information, fine. But I really think there's a lot more work and a lot more reflection that this council needs to take on this particular document and this whole concept of social framework. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to hear it from the rest of council, because this isn't killing it. It's just making a reflection on what we're going to do with it.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Fleming. So if it's accepted for information, what will administration do with it? Is it, I'll be honest, is it the preference to have it for information, or would you prefer to have it referred so that it can come back with changes?
Through your worship, I'm good with it being accepted for information. I think the feedback that we're getting through the course of the meeting will help us understand where the document resonated and where it didn't, and we can make those adjustments going forward. Again, it's not an action-oriented plan. It is more of a framework in terms of how we will act and how we will go forward. And I don't think, like anything that comes out of it that's financial in nature, comes back to council for further discussion anyway. So I think I would say I'm fine with this being accepted as information, and it will still provide us with good information and guidance as we implement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye, are you good, Councillor Harris, with that before I leave you?
Well, at some point in time, I really think in deference to Mr. Fleming's comment, there needs to be something that comes back to us to say what's happening. At some point, you're going to have to report back as to where we are. Yeah, we received his information, but are you using it, and what have you done to actually create more specificity in how the general philosophical context is employed in a meaningful way going forward? So if you can do that, then we can receive it as information. If not, I'm suggesting that there needs to be a specific direction to administration to come back to us for something that's meaningful and relevant. So that's my qualification there. Thanks.
Okay, I'll let Mr. Fleming answer. We lost your video feed.
Yeah, through your worship, I appreciate that comment. It is the intention for FCSS to, and for the city, we've been talking about this internally, that we do want to have more conversations with council about the social development aspect of the city. I think it's something that it doesn't get a lot of time in council chambers. And so it is our intention to come back, not necessarily report formally on this document, but we do want to come back and report on what we're hearing and seeing out there in the community. So I do think we will be back, and I do think these will be topics that we discuss in the future. That is our intent.
Okay, thank you. You're good, Councillor Harris. Okay, Councillor Abatoye.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind acceptance for information, and just hearing what you had said after I spoke. I don't think this is in any way, shape, or form undermining the work that has gone into it, because you had mentioned like different, organizations that have been a part of this process. So it's not in any way undermining the work that's been done, but I think it's just important for council to understand what's been approved, so definitely appreciate all the work that has gone into it. But I'll definitely accept it for information, because I think it's also very necessary for us to have that framework. Also, definitely appreciate how you brought in, seniors, youth, low-income families, ensuring that nobody's left behind in the whole process. And I think it's really crucial for us to, have some sort of guiding documents, using your words. So I'll definitely appreciate supports the motion, accepting for information, especially hearing that you will continue to do work on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Macon.
Thank you. I guess the only issue that I have is that I don't really understand the difference, and I appreciate administration's comments and where they see it going. I just don't understand where the difference between adopting and accepting for information is into the next steps, because I feel like either way, they're going to use this guiding document and work with it and continue to change as they go and as this develops and as social development framework changes. So I guess I just don't really understand, like I said, the difference between these two. And I think that what happens after will be the same regardless. So
okay,
I suppose I can support it.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Kelly to close on the amending motion.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate the comments from everybody. I'm trying to remember and work in backward order. Councillor Macon, I see a significant difference in the word adopt versus accept for information from a council perspective. Not perhaps from an administrative perspective, but definitely from a council perspective. And I would remind council that those that are remote might not have been able to look at the responses. I asked the question, would your work change or could your work continue if council took this approach? And the nod was affirmative. What I've had happen in the past over now 6 budgets, I guess, as a councillor, and I understand administration's perspective. I would do the same if I was in their chair. When they make a budget request of council, the budget request will say, pursuant to the framework adopted by council, we ask for this money, which makes, from a council perspective, it a lot harder to push back and say, what are you talking about? As opposed to forcing administration to take the framework, rephrase the framework to suit the particular goal or aspiration or ask of them and bring it back at that time. And that's the way I see this working. Everybody says it's not finite, it's not fixed in time. It's jello. It moves around fixed objects and continues to morph shape and color as time passes. I stress, I'm an accountant. I don't work in that world. But for those that do, they need to then show council that they've adapted and adopted a changed approach pursuant to this framework. So reference the framework, show how you've adapted the framework to meet the specific request and bring it back. And I am more than comfortable with that. But to ask me as a councillor to use the word adopt on something I truly do not understand, I can't vote for. So I honestly think we've reached a reasonable compromise, and I'm getting acknowledgement from the 2 people sitting in front of council. So, and it doesn't mean the work ends, and it doesn't mean this document sits on a shelf somewhere, any more than it would mean the same if in fact we adopted it. You will make it what it is. It's your working document, not mine. So it's really up to you to keep it alive. When I say you, I'm looking at administration, for those that aren't here. It's up to them to keep it alive, and it's up to them to put it to work. And it doesn't change either way, except my commitment to it has changed by the word receive as information, the phrase. So I would encourage council to take this approach on it, and will allow our capable staff to mold it and shape it as necessary going forward. And I look forward to seeing it in its new or revised or condensed or specific iteration sometime in the future. Thank you.
Okay, the amending motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Now procedurally to parliamentary. We need to approve the main motion as amended, correct?
Yeah, we're going to put on the screen the amended motion.
Okay, thank you. While they're putting that on, because we're going to the main motion as amended, Councillor Blizzard, you're at the main motion. Now it's amended, but you may still close on it.
Okay, no one else going to comment?
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, just a couple of things on it. I thought I'll just say it here instead of before when we were looking at the amending motion. I think I see the amending motion as a little bit of semantics. It's one or the other. I saw it kind of as the either name or either wording. It's kind of the same purpose. I do have a request though, so maybe because of all of us struggling with this, can you come back in, whether it's 6 months, a year, at some point, maybe before next summer, and give us some feedback on how this document has been used, how it's affected your area?
Through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, I would love to.
Okay. Yeah, and I had more. It's not necessary. I think this will go through, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I just have a question. You've actually changed the main motion. Doesn't it typically keep the motion and then say as amended?
It's now amended, so the motion can be shown as amended.
Just
pass that motion.
I'm just making sure for procedural.
Sometimes we'll do the, sorry, through your worship, sometimes I know we do that for if the motion's been amended like prior to the meeting before it comes back. This one's reading with the amendment in it already, so I think we're okay, but we can include it if you're more comfortable. I think either way it's fine.
Okay, as long as you're comfortable with it, as the motion, the main motion.
It does provide clarity because the amending motion says exactly what we are replacing, what wording we're putting in there. So if council, we can change to...
No, that's fine. Okay. I'll just for future maybe double check on that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? All right, just make sure nobody wants to speak any further. Just a second. 2. Are you seeing it on the... Councillor Harris, are you seeing it now on the screen? Yeah, he's saying yes. Okay.
Yes, it wasn't there, but now it is. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. All right, we're going to take a little break. So it's 4:03. So let's be back in our seats at 4:15. That's 12 minutes. Thank you.
You said you were going to say anything yet. Just say it. I know. Well, okay. Right.
we're so used to doing such complex lenses, then so I think we're just missing on that. I feel like I'm missing something.
There we are. Okay, the time is 4:15, so we will resume the meeting. So if those who are joining us virtually, if you want to join, that would be awesome. Great, thank you. So the next item we have is item 6.2, City Naming Registry Submission. Irina Kennedy will be presenting.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Irina Kennedy, and I am the Senior Legislative Officer with the City of Fort Saskatchewan. I'm here to present a request to add Stuart Hennig's name to the City Naming Registry. As outlined in the report before you, Council's City Naming Policy and Procedure establishes a process by which the names of individuals can be applied to neighborhoods within the city, municipal parks, or city assets and facilities. The addition of a name to the city's naming registry is done with consideration to policy guiding principles, such as quoting directly from policy section 4.1.3. Representatives of individuals who were instrumental in the development of the city or have contributed and or participated in a broad range of public service and community activities. Further, Procedure Section 3.1.5 states that public service or community activity is assessed based on the amount of the time the individual contributed, membership in boards and committees, and how the individual was involved with community initiatives, among other factors. Given this criteria, I would like to speak about the application before you. On May 1st, 2024, administration received an application to add Stuart Hennig's name to the City Naming Registry. This request does not seek immediate application to a specific asset, but seeks inclusion in the registry for potential future use. The submission is also supported by Hennig family. The application included in the agenda package provides an overview of Stuart Hennig's participation in a broad range of public service and community activities. He served as a member of council from October 2007 to 2017, chaired the CRASCS panel, was a member of the SDAB board, as well as other boards. And just to name a few, it is Capital Region Northeast Water Services Commission from 2007 to 2017, Capital Region Waste Minimization Advisory Committee, Downtown Redevelopment Advisory Committee, Family and Community Support Services Board, Fort Saskatchewan Foundation Board, Fort Saskatchewan Historic Resources Advisory Board, Fort Saskatchewan Policing Committee, Heartland Housing Foundation, Intermunicipal Relations Committee, Fort Saskatchewan and Strathcona County from 2013 to 2015, Northeast Region Community Awareness Emergency Response Board, and others. He was also a long-time Rotarian and dedicated significant time to volunteering in the community. Administration has reviewed the submission and feels that it meets the requirements of the associated policy and procedure and aligns with the spirit and intent of the same. Should Council decide to approve the addition of Stuart Hennig's name to the City Naming Registry, the motion can be found in the corresponding report of the agenda package. Thank you for your time, and I'm now available for questions.
Okay, so I'll open it up for questions first. So I'm going to ask a question, not about this application, a little bit. So when I looked at the application, there's very basic information that's being provided. So I guess under our procedures, should there be something that requires the applicant to actually do a little more research? And not just this one, but even on the previous one that we approved, our form seems very basic, and it feels like you're having to do a lot more of the research.
Yeah, so we have it. The policy has guiding principles, and then I guess it's individual, the extent to whoever is applying for that name to be added, what information they provide. We only can accept that based on whether or not the individual was a whether or not the individual contributed, how much he contributed, the amount of time that he dedicated, whether or not he was volunteering in the community, public body or public service figure and stuff like that. And then based on that, whether or not it meets certain criteria, we then bring it up to council. However, I hear what you're saying, because a lot more goes beyond the application, and it probably, if council wishes so, could probably be investigated a little further if we need any supplementary documentation, any letters of support, anything like this in the future. But at this point, the application, that's the only requirement, and then it depends how people fill it out.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, questions?
Thank you. Irene, I'll confess I did not take the time to look up the actual policy that we're referring to, but I did glance at, I'm going to stop there. It would seem to me that it would make sense to update that policy, and I'm wondering if administration has a plan to bring that before council sometime reasonably soon. And if yes, let me know when, and if not, I'll take that away and decide what to do with it. Thank you.
So the policy was initially adopted in 2014. It was revised in January of 2023. However, if council wishes to revise it further, we can always take that recommendation and work on that and implement any changes that we see the policy would benefit from.
Now that I've worked with it a little bit, I think there's a missing element to the policy. There's nothing I'm aware of in the policy that causes names to drop off after a period of time. So if this thing were to run out for another 3 or 4 decades, we could end up with a list of names that nobody felt were really popular, but because they're not being used, but they never disappear. And I do think that it behooves us to, and I didn't realize it had been updated that quite recently, because I don't remember getting involved in it. But I do think that we should give some thought to how names come off the list. And I'm just suggesting that the passage of time would maybe be one relevant parameter.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, we can definitely take that away and work on that. And if there's any other recommendations on that, we can take that away and bring it forward at a future council meeting for revision.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Macon. You're next.
If there's no further questions, I'm prepared to make the motion.
Yep, I'm not seeing anybody else on here. I'm looking for little tiny hands on the screen. No, looks like you're good.
Okay, I'll make the motion that council approve the addition of the name Stuart Hennig to the city naming registry.
All right, I'll accept the motion. You may go ahead and speak to it.
Thank you. I'm the one who had put forward the name for the naming registry, and I had done so a little while ago, I guess without knowing how little time Stu had left. When I had contacted him about my intention to put his name forward, he was genuinely touched by the gesture and quite happy with it. I agree with you, Mayor Ketcher, that the application was not very robust and was missing quite a bit of information. Stuart had told me that he was going to provide me a more complete list of his accomplishments, but unfortunately passed before we could get the chance to do that. I wasn't quite going to put his name forward so soon after he passed. However, his family had found our conversation, and again, they were really touched and wanted to know the status of it, and we're very happy to sign the form on his behalf. I would say that I've been aware of the contributions Stuart has made to this community since I was a teenager, so well over 25 years of his commitment. And I'll just read the one comment on the submission. Stu is an unwavering advocate for this community, a tireless volunteer, and a friend to all who had the honor of knowing him, a leader who spread his smile, contagious positivity, and genuine heart. And I sincerely believe that he is a well-suited name to be added to this registry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is open for discussion and debate. Councillor Blizzard. Whoops, sorry, just a second. Go ahead.
I'll support this motion. I had the pleasure of working with Stu on council when I was on for the first term, and I found him to be quite a mentor in many different ways. I also dealt with him through the Rotary Club in a few different things, and I know he was quite a strength in there, and I think this is a good move.
All right, thank you. So I'm next in the speaking order. I'll support it too. My hope is that for historic purposes and the piece of paper that goes into the book, so that when people are looking for something that's going to be named, it actually includes more of the information, because yes, Councillor Macon, it was very vague. You know, it should talk about his years of being a volunteer with the children, with being a scout leader, you know, his passion with the Heartland Housing, because he was on there for 7 years and took it up to design, but then handed it over after he resigned, and even really the items that he worked with Rotary that really made him notable in the community, with the Operation Red Nose, driving people home, getting them home safe, and the music in the park at the farmers market. So I'm hoping that the actual part that goes into the register will have some of that in there, because the last thing, and I don't want to get slapped for saying this, just because you serve as a member of council doesn't mean it gives you an automatic buy-in to be on the naming register. You actually need to do stuff with your boards, your committees, and involvement with the community. And based on that, that's why I would support him on this, and being a long-term resident that really did make an impact and cared. So that's my only request, as I support this. Thank you. Anything further on discussion and debate? Councillor Macon on close.
Thank you. I'll just add the comment that his family wanted to be there today, but unfortunately they had a memorial, but they did send in their gratefulness for this request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. And just before we move on, I know with some of the comments, Mr. Fleming, will you require at some point in time a notice of motion to bring something back for this, or you'll just take it away?
Through your worship, a notice of motion would actually be great. Then I for sure know that all members of council are supportive of bringing the policy back, and I can help word that for any member of council that wants to move it. I can draft something.
Okay. That'll be great. Thank you. Next one, 6.3 was done by consent. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll move to 7.1, Bylaw C12-24, amending Land Use Bylaw 2320. We have Taryn Samara and Craig Thomas presenting.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Taryn Samra. I'm a planner here with the city, and I'm here to present a brief summary of Bylaw C12-24 to redistrict lands in Southport Meadows for high-density residential. To begin, in March of 2024, Alterra, on behalf of Southport Development Corporation, approached administration regarding their next stage of development in Southport Meadows, which can be seen in light blue. The Southport Area Structure Plan designates this entire site as high-density, street-oriented mixed use. The purpose of the entire site is to provide a variety of housing options and neighborhood commercial that will create a neighborhood hub that will serve the needs of the community. Please note, this application is only one phase of the development of the site. The remaining larger portion of the site is still being planned and will be brought forward for council's decision at a later date. The application being presented seeks to redistrict approximately 1.6 hectares of land, as seen as the hatched area in black, from UR Urban Reserve to RMH High Density Multiple Residential District. The purpose to rezone to RMH district is to develop apartments. The subject redistricting site is in the undeveloped part of South Fort Meadows, or South Fort Meadows neighborhood. It is east of Greenfield Link, west of 92nd Street, south of the Stormwater Management Facility, and north of the future South Ridge Boulevard extension. The development connects directly to Greenfield Link, a collector road, and is also in proximity of South Ridge Boulevard and an arterial road. Within these roads are multi-use trails that connect to the extensive trail network. Next, I want to speak about conformance with the city's planning documents. The Municipal Development Plan designates the South Fort Meadows area as part of developing neighborhood, which designs neighborhoods that are walkable and incorporate a diversity of housing options for the city's diverse population. The South Fort Area Structure Plan designates this area as high-density, street-oriented mixed use. The intent for the area is to provide a variety of housing for different age and income groups. Housing options could include street-oriented townhouses, stacked townhouses, and apartment buildings. From the South Ridge Meadows Outline Plan, the subject area is designated as high-density residential with possible mixed use and street-oriented design along Greenfield Link. The intent of the entire site is to create a neighborhood hub that would integrate and serve the needs of the community. Administration supports the redistricting application due to the policies of the Municipal Development Plan, South Fort Area Structure Plan, and South Fort Ridge Meadows Outline Plan through site design, housing diversity, street-oriented development, and through affordable, inclusive, and housing diversity for all residents. Should Council get first reading to the bylaw, a public hearing will be advertised in the Fort Saskatchewan Record. Landowners within 100 meters of the proposed redistricting will be mailed a notice. A copy of the proposed bylaw will be available on the city's website, and the target date for the public hearing is July 2nd, 2024. And that concludes my presentation. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions that council may have for administration.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Kelly. Oops, just go ahead.
Thank you. To continue my theme of late, the arterial road that comes past the Ford dealership heading east, I can never remember the name of it. South Ridge, there it is. Thank you. It's not on my map here that I can see. South Ridge Boulevard. Will it be extended to at least Greenfield Link so that this high density development will be able to access and egress from their development along South Ridge Boulevard when it is built and occupied?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, yes, the plan is to have South Ridge Boulevard constructed by the end of this year to Greenfield Link.
So just to summarize, yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
Yeah, I guess no motion has been made, so to talk on that yet. What is a stacked townhouse? I know a townhouse, I know duplex, I know, various ones. I've never heard of a stack. Does that just make it 3 stories high? Do you have 2 on top?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, there's a variety, I would say. You could have multiple, one on top of each other, or you could have, I believe when you have the garage right under, and then you would have your residential dwellings above as well.
That would be called a stack. So kind of their basement is the garage.
Yes, that's
okay.
Correct.
And the other question I have, it mentions commercial. So where's the commercial come into this? This is all residential?
Through your worship, Council Blizzard, yes. So the site is a high density with possible mixed use, right? So the application that's currently in front of you is just a portion of the entire site. So you would have the residential, which is what we're here to discuss, but the remaining larger portion, that's where you could have those other neighborhood level commercial, which in the end creates this neighborhood hub for that would integrate and serve the surrounding community.
Oh, you're not talking commercial on this portion of the site?
No, for this for this app, through your worship, to council members, for this application, it's we're here to discuss the RMH, which is a high density residential.
Okay, and I have one more. So it mentions the density would be 70 dwelling units per hectare. So how do you achieve that with townhouses, or is part of it going to be apartment building too? Because I think that was referenced somewhere as possibility.
Through your worship, to Council Blizzard, yeah. So there's a variety of ways. I for a site like this, apartments would probably be the better way to do it, because with townhouses you need more space, right? Well, this is kind of more. I don't want to use the word it's narrow, but it's more elongated. While with apartments you can build up, while townhouse you kind of spread out. So for this case, to meet through careful planning, it might be able to do with townhouses, but through apartment buildings, it would be much easier to achieve the density.
And they're talking that apartments or both, or you don't know yet?
Through your worship, Council Blizzard. So through discussions with the developer, like the discussion is for apartments. No formal application has been submitted for a development permit, but so I don't have like a timeline or like an actual application in front of me to say yes, but through discussions that's what was discussed was apartments.
Okay, I'll leave it for now. I may have more.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
So in the administrative report, the motion lists as is, and then it says, and further that a public hearing be scheduled. For years, we always put in the report the date by which the public hearing would be scheduled. It appears we've gotten away from that, and I know I've asked this question before. Why don't we just put in the date that we're going to hold the public hearing? I mean, you touched on it in your presentation, but why did we make that change? Was there a change in legislation or regulation or whatever? Why don't we be more specific so that we all know when the public hearing will be held?
Through your worship, to Councillor Harris, I'm not aware of the change, but I thinking about it, I don't think it would be an issue to include the date going forward.
Well, you know what? I think that's just time specific. If you know when it's going to be, then put it in the report the council approves, and then we're setting the date for the public hearing. When I got on council last term, I asked this question because somewhere along the line, from the time I used to run the department and present these kinds of reports, we always recommended to council the date for the public hearing. So I think that's just an administrative change that I think makes sense. So that's why I asked the question. So if you're okay with that, I leave that with administration. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm actually going to go to Mr. Fleming because I know it's a long time ago we changed that.
Yeah, through your worship, we haven't been doing it for a while. The intent is that it gives you a little bit more flexibility if something should happen after the meeting and we need to change or adjust agendas or schedules from speakers and whatnot. But we can revisit it for sure. I probably wouldn't make a commitment on one way or the other, but we can revisit this and have a conversation about it.
Okay.
You know, it's just time specific.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard, round two.
Just, I guess the few other bylaws that we've changed for have had like a site plan. So this one doesn't because it's just a normal category. Because I know we had like special ones with the townhouses narrow. So I assume this isn't going to have 11-foot townhouses.
Through your worship, to Council Blizzard, as for the site plan, the application that was submitted, unfortunately, it wasn't in time for this report, but I think definitely at the next hearing I can definitely provide something for you.
Sounds good. And I think that's it.
Through your worship, Councillor Blizzard, I could maybe add to that as well. In the past, it seems like the last few that we've done have been special districts or direct control type districts, where they're very site specific and the developer is able to provide some more information and more detail. With this one, it's just a standard redistricting, so it's a little bit refreshing to get back to a standard redistricting. So the actual plan will come forth after it's redistricted, after it's subdivided, and then that gives administration to deal specifically with the development permit.
Okay. And one more thing, and I don't know if it's not really a question. I guess I could ask what parking is going to be like, but something to consider. People still drive cars, and it's been more and more that we're assuming they don't. I guess I just would say let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, and through your worship to Councillor Blizzard, that's a fair comment. And because this is a standard district, the expectation is that it would have to comply with the rules and regulations that are set forth within that district.
Thank you.
Okay, just give me a second, just double check here. Okay, not seeing anything else. Councillor Harris wants to put the motion on, so go ahead.
Yes, I'm glad to move that council give first reading to bylaw C12-24 to amend land use bylaw C2320 by redistricting a portion of the southeast quarter of section 19, township 54, range 22, west of the 4th meridian from UR urban reserve to RMH high density multiple residential district, and that a public hearing be scheduled for, what date was it? July the 2nd?
Would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, what's the date? It came up in the presentation, but I couldn't recall the date. Was it the 2nd of July?
To your worship, Councillor Harris, that is correct.
Can you just add
so
that
I'm being,
to the, thank you. They'll add it.
I'm just being time specific. Thank you very much. You know what? It's first reading. We're going to have a public hearing. Anytime that we've got high density, I know it's obviously an interesting time for discussion about what that means. I think Councillor Kelly's comment or question was good about the major arterial servicing this site and the rest of that area. So I think that's really positive. The developer is moving along post haste, so that's really good. I'm glad to see that. It's good for our community. So I'll be voting for the motion.
Okay, it is open for discussion and debate. Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, are there any points of interest? Oh, no, sorry, it's notice of motion. Okay, so typically the deputy mayor would take this on, but Councillor Macon's not sitting here. Are you the next deputy mayor?
I'll move it on down the table to whomever wants it.
I was already asked.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just try and stay in the right order. I don't know. Okay, so I will turn the chair over to Councillor Blizzard so I can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, and can you read in your notice of motion?
Great. So that my motion is that council direct administration to assess the feasibility, location, and costs associated with construction of a permanent disc golf course, including minor stakeholder engagement, return to council and report by the end of Q3 2024.
Okay, and do you have any opening comments?
I do. So I'm bringing this forward because we did hear from some different disc golf people, but I have been out to a few events where disc golf has been percolating in the community. So I guess my comments are disc golf is one of the fastest growing sports and one of the top facilities for municipalities as they are developing their parks these days. And it provides health benefits. Anyone can play it. It has social benefits, and there's over 16, soon to be 17 disc golf courses within 30 minutes drive of Edmonton. So Devon, Bonaccord, and so outside of Edmonton, a lot of the municipalities are getting involved with this. Morinville, Leduc, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain. And there's more and more people, and just as we had pickleball come up once upon a time, I think it's worthy of having a good conversation. And the reason I bring this up is it's something that is reasonably affordable. It's a lot cheaper than building another playground or putting in a basketball court or some of the other facilities that we have. And once it's placed in a facility permanent, it's free to play for the public. And that's something that we are beginning to see more and more, is people having less access to funds to be able to go out and do actually paid activities. So of course, yes, they're walking the trails more, riding their bikes, their electric scooters, but it would, and taking the younger children to playgrounds, but it would actually give families and anyone of all ages, because it is multi-generational, to be able to go out and play this for free. So I think it just warrants having the conversation, and that's really all I'm asking for today, is to see if we can direct administration just to see if the feasibility is there, if there's a location that would work, and just to do a little bit of stakeholder engagement and come back to us and see if there's actually a desire to do this. So I will leave with that.
Thank you very much. And I see a few on the speaking order. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Question for Mayor Katcher. I'm wondering why you included the modifier minor in front of stakeholder engagement, and what exactly does minor mean to you, as opposed to just leaving the word out?
Well, we can leave the word out. I'm fine on a friendly amendment on that. I was helped to have that written. So
if you're amenable, then
yeah,
a friendly amendment, delete the word minor in front of stakeholder.
Yep, and I'm fine with that being friendly.
That's everything? Okay, and Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. I don't quite agree with this motion, and it's nothing against the concept of having disc golf installed in Fort Saskatchewan. I remember during their presentation to us, I believe the costing analysis for one of these types of facilities was around $28,000 in total. So my concern lies in the cost and time that it would take to get to the point of making a decision. And frankly, I don't think that we need, similar to the Bike Skills Park, which was a completely different magnitude, but we don't need 16 potential site proposals and layout for the designs in this. So I'm just not really understanding the value in getting a consultant to come back to council with an elaborate report for such a low cost facility, which its footprint would be very minor in whichever park. And I believe the group did identify Price Alderson Park as a preferred location for something like this. So for a few cement pad tee boxes and then the baskets being installed for a total cost of under $30,000, I just don't want to see a report be costing $40,000 for a $30,000 facility, because that to me is not a great use of funds. So I guess maybe question to administration is what would we be paying to receive this report back, or is there a ballpark of an idea along with this motion?
So through your worship, when we talked about this as the notice of motion was being drafted, we feel that like if you compare this to the Bike Skills Park, that's a complex project that we don't have a lot of background in, and we really felt we needed outside expertise to provide a lot of the guidance. Whereas in this case, we feel we know enough internally about the sport, and just because of its simplicity, and that we do have a user group, small user group within the city that's passionate about this, that we can get some guidance from, that we can just do this work internally. And our intent was to bring back an administrative report by the end of September. So no hard cost. The cost would be in the staff time.
Okay, good enough. That was my assumption then, that it would have been a more elaborate report from a consultant. Okay, that might change my mind. I'll hear from the rest of council.
Thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you. I'll support the motion. Just because I don't know much about this, I would actually want to see when this came back any information regarding risk mitigation that comes with something like this? I'm assuming that they don't get a great big park just to share it to themselves. So flying discs around, a big field to me creates a little bit of a risk. I myself am a terrible thrower, and if I tried to do it, I would probably take out somebody's 2 front teeth and throw behind me. So I'd love to know, like, if there is anything that we can do for risk mitigation, like if someone's just walking through and then suddenly takes a Frisbee to the head. I just don't know how we can control that. So I'd like a little bit of information surrounding that, but otherwise I think everything else is in this report. So I will support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I also have just a question of, you said staff will do it, so there's a cost to that, I guess, in the essence of staff time. And do we have staff and the time for the staff to do this?
Yeah, through your worship, one of our recreation coordinators, as the work is winding down with the bike skills park research that was already being undertaken, we do believe we can fit this into the work plan.
Okay, and I'd also like to hear in this, if this goes through, what the group that is asking for this, what are they putting forward? Because I would think that they could contribute something more than just, hey, we want this and here's where we want it, and maybe do some fundraising.
Yes, through your worship, we can definitely make that inquiry. Our initial impression is that this was meant to be a city funded piece of a city funded activity or infrastructure. The group itself is not incorporated, so they don't have money, bank accounts, things like that. It is a group by the definition of the word. So
okay, thank you. Okay, that's it. Do you have it? Oh, sorry, Councillor Kelly.
I share your sentiments on your last comment. When this group was approached, or when a couple or 3 guys approached council some time ago about this type of facility, those were my comments to them at that time. I'm disappointed a little bit that they haven't taken the time to become involved, and I do think we have precedent in the community for groups that have a little bit of skin in the game when they ask for facilities. I can prepare a list, but I won't at this time. I think so. I would support Mr. Fleming, Councillor Blizzard's comments about skin in the game and a little more involvement rather than a simple ask. I know that it's a low budget thing, so I wouldn't expect volumes of activity either, but I'd like to see some sort of skin in the game and commitment along with that for the facility, perhaps for maintaining it or whatever. I don't know, but not more than just a simple ask. That's really where I'm coming from, so thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Harris.
Thanks. This messaging thing doesn't work all that well. Anyways, when I look at this, I'm fine with looking at the feasibility, location, and cost, because ultimately it goes to the point where we probably have an opportunity to talk to the proponents of this. But I have a broader question, and that is, how do we assess the needs for other facilities that aren't necessarily common to our cultural context? I had a young gentleman, obviously from another country, immigrant to Fort Saskatchewan, and he asked me why we don't have cricket pitches. And I said to him, I have no idea, because probably there aren't a lot of cricket players. And he said, oh no, there are a lot of cricket players in Fort Saskatchewan. So tangential to this thing, it's almost a question of how do we assess the need for facilities that haven't been traditionally part of our recreational or sport culture in the community. So that's just something that I drop to administration to look at. But in this context, looking at the feasibility and location and cost of this, I'm fine with this because it will move it along to the point where potentially there should be some skin in the game, as a number of my colleagues have indicated. Those are my questions, thoughts, and let's see where it goes.
I don't see anyone else. I do have another question here, and this is going, if this goes forward, I would like to see, question first. When soccer plays games or baseball, do they rent fields, or is it all just here you go play on them when they have scheduled games?
Oh, through your worship, I'm gonna venture. I'm gonna tell you what I believe it is, and then I'm gonna leave the asterisks in there that I get to correct myself. I believe with baseball that they maintain and book out the diamonds, and I believe soccer books out the diamonds through us. I don't believe there's a cost to it though. So I think that's how those two sports work, but I would need to, I want to verify that.
Yeah, because I believe pickleball doesn't pay, but I'd like to get maybe some of that included in the course, in the report, just so that if they're not paying either, but have exclusive use for some kind of a league, we have some kind of standards for it.
Yeah, and through your worship, I don't think these facilities work like that, where there's booked out or exclusive use times, just because of the nature of the sport. But that's also something that I'll encourage staff to include in the information.
Thank you. And Mayor Ketcher to close.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the comments, and I just feel it's time to talk about this. And I know it was a small group that came forward, but there's a larger group out there. And you know, I have an appreciation every time this smaller group brings and does a temporary course either at Legacy Park or down at Turner Park, and they get a number of people that come out and say, wow, this is a lot of fun. You know, I know there is some precedent setting when it comes to the sand volleyball, that the city gave some funds to that, and their league only lasted 1 year, but, you know, it is what it is. You know, the cost differential is so much different. And with this, it's something that would be free to anybody to enjoy. All they have to do is go pick up basically a small Frisbee. And so when you even talk about the risk, people, you know, when they're throwing their Frisbees, even when we're at a movie in the park, you know, it's minimal risk. But typically with this, it's people going out as a family or a couple and throwing a Frisbee to a basket and walking through the park, and it's low impact, you know. And as I said before, I just think it's time to talk about this, because we don't charge for the basketball that we have in the playgrounds. We don't charge people for the playgrounds that we build in the different areas of the city, you know. So I understand there can be some precedent setting, but I think when it comes to a free activity, and I'm also thinking probably at the cost of what this will be when it comes forward, we'll be able to go to maybe even another nonprofit group that may actually even be willing to fund it, because we have lots of groups that like to provide funding for these things and get their names on it. So I just appreciate that if we can have the conversation and get some information back. And I'll close. Thank you.
Okay, the motion is now closed. Please cast your votes. That is carried unanimously, and I will hand the chair back to Mayor Gale.
Thank you.
Mayor Ketcher.
We're getting so much more efficient at this. All right. Are there any other notice of motions? Not today. All right. Are there any points of interest? Councillor Abatoye.
Yeah, so just wanted to talk a little bit about the FCM conference that I attended in Calgary over the weekend. And it was nice to see regional councils attend, over 3,000 representatives from across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. And very educative sessions that was attended. And one thing that particularly interested me is about artificial intelligence and how that can be useful in terms of municipal governance and with things like building permits and whatnot. And so that's something I'll definitely be having a conversation with administration about. But all in all, it was nice to hear from the Prime Minister and the oppositions, and hear more about the emphases of collaboration between municipalities, regions, and all three levels of governments. And yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Great. Thank you very much for that information. Any other points of interest? Not seeing any. All right. Are there any councillor inquiries to administration? Okay, not seeing any. I will take a motion to go in camera. Councillor Abatoye.
I'll make the motion that we go in camera as per FOIP.
Thank you. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. So we will go up to in camera and we'll start about 5 after 5. We'll give everybody 5 minutes to change.